Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And I apologize, I've been off for 2 weeks. So we're going to catch up with some of the people who've died recently. And because we have so many people to do, some of the pieces will be cut shorter than I would have liked. But as soon as we catch up with all the people who've died the last 2 weeks, we'll be able to devote appropriate attention. And that should take us about 2 weeks. We're going to start out tonight with our feature, Elie Wiesel, who died recently at the age of 87. And he's part of our ongoing series on Nobel Prize winners because he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. Normally, as such, he would get his own show, but we can't do that tonight. But we are going to talk about him for a while because he's one of the great characters of the 20th century. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he became the moral conscience and the moral voice for the Holocaust and for Jews all over the world. His book, Night, published in 1960, is considered a classic, one of the great works of literature of the 20th century, discussing his time at Auschwitz. And as the Washington Post said, short enough to be read in a single setting, the volume captures all of the most salient images of the Holocaust. The teeming ghettos where many struggled to believe that the worst was yet to come, the cattle cars, the barracks, the smokestacks. The book also contains one of the most famous images in the vast theologic debates surrounding the slaughter, the vision of God with a noose around his neck. Here is Matthew Bannister of the BBC4 Last Word on Elie Wiesel.
The Holocaust survivor and writer Elie Wiesel was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986 for his work in keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive. He was a charismatic lecturer and author of novels, essays, and plays. Elie Wiesel was born in the Carpathian Mountains in what was then Romania. In 1944, when the Nazis marched into Hungary, he was a teenager. He and his family were rounded up along with thousands of other Jews and taken to the concentration camp at Auschwitz. His friend, Menachem Rosensaft, is General Counsel of the World Jewish Congress.
He and his father were separated from the other members of the family. His mother and his younger sister, Tzipora, were sent directly to the gas chambers.
And his father died in the camp.
He and his father remained together, and his father died some weeks before the liberation.
And we know a lot about what happened to Mr. Wiesel's family because we can read about it in his book, Night.
That's correct.
I pinched myself. Was I still alive? Was I awake? How was it possible that men, women, and children were being burned and that the world kept silent? No, all of this could not be real. A nightmare, perhaps.
What prompted him to write that memoir of what had happened?
It was an imperative to bear witness.
We marched. Gates opened and closed. We continued to march between the barbed wire. At every step, white signs with black skulls looked down on us. The inscription, warning, danger of death. What irony. Was there here a single place where one was not in danger of death?
It's compelling because it is through the eyes, through the thought, through the mind of a teenager who is encountering these horrific experiences, and so that the reader finds himself or herself transported into what Elie Wiesel subsequently famously called the kingdom of night.
There are no words for what happened. Then at that time I used the word Holocaust because I had nothing else. I was looking for a word that transcended reality, that transcended politics. I wanted to show that what happened then was not simply a pogrom, was not simply a massacre, was not simply a tragedy that befell our people. It's something else.
He was a very, very gentle individual with a spine of steel. He had no problem standing up to presidents of the United States, politicians, or anyone else who he felt was not living up to the basic ideological, intellectual, moral imperatives that a situation required.
How did he feel when he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize?
He felt that he was accepting the prize on behalf of all those who had gone through the inferno of the Holocaust. And as he said at the time, it was an opportunity to also declare that one has to do something with suffering.
The irony of our times is that the killers do not feel guilty, but we do. And we shouldn't. But we do. We do because it was all a matter of chance. I didn't do anything to remain alive. Therefore, someone could have been now in my place sitting with you and telling about me. And I am obsessed with that person too, meaning whose place have I taken? Or who has taken my place? That I feel I must do something with every hour of my life, with every possibility offered to me, because I survived and he did not.
Elie Wiesel, who's died aged 87.
Well, one of the places I was the last 2 weeks was at Dachau, which was the work camp and the model camp for Auschwitz, and he's right, there were no words to describe it. He's also right that so many of the SS who ran the camps got off with either no punishment or very light punishment, which was an insult to the memory of the victims, and Elie Wiesel was about memory, and he was about past generations and future generations, and he was worried that when the last Holocaust survivor dies, we will forget, and he made it his mission for us not to forget. Here he is in a speech to a group of young people about what we have learned.
Say to young people, you are our hope. Whatever we do now is not only for the sake of the past, but surely also for the sake of the future. And you are our future. And we believe, therefore, that whatever we are trying to do here, whatever witnesses are trying to say in their testimonies, the best and the saddest, you are now the flag bearers. It is your memory that inherits ours. Our memory will live in yours.
We're going to move on now to a couple of writers. The first is Michael Herr, who died recently at the age of 76. Michael Herr wrote what I consider one of the 3 great books about our Vietnam experience. The 3 are The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, A Rumor of War by Phil Caputo, but I think the best is Michael Herr's book Dispatches that he wrote in 1977. It's an impressionistic book about his time as a correspondent in Vietnam, and it's a gripping read, and it also has some of the great lines that I've ever read about Vietnam. One of my favorites is, "A sucking chest wound is God's way of telling you to slow down." His partner in the book who gets a lot of attention is Sean Flynn, the son of Errol Flynn, who was a war photographer and was later to die at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. And together their stories are absolutely unforgettable. Whatever you do, if you're interested in what it was like to be in Vietnam, read Michael Herr's book Dispatches. Eventually his experiences in Vietnam scarred him. He stopped writing, he refused to give interviews, and he moved to England. And while he never wrote anything again that compared with Dispatches, John le Carré called it the best book I've ever read on men and war in our time. Michael Herr made 2 other artistic contributions to our understanding of Vietnam. He helped write the screenplay with Stanley Kubrick to Full Metal Jacket. He did that when he was in England. And he also wrote the narration to Francis Ford Coppola's epic about Vietnam, Apocalypse Now, which was based on The Heart of Darkness. Here's the protagonist, Martin Sheen, with a little bit of that narration in the movie.
Saigon. I'm still only in Saigon. Every time I think I'm going to wake up back in the jungle. When I was home after my first tour, it was worse. I'd wake up and there'd be nothing. I hardly said a word to my wife until I said yes to a divorce. When I was here, I wanted to be there. When I was there, all I could think of was getting back into the jungle. I'm here a week now, waiting for a mission, getting softer. Every minute I stay in this room, I get weaker. And every minute Charlie squats in the bush, he gets stronger. Each time I looked around, the walls moved in a little tighter.
Just my opinion, Michael Herr was an incredible talent who never got his due. The other author I want to make mention of is Alvin Toffler, who died recently at the age of 87. Alvin Toffler was a nice Jewish boy from New York City, and he became famous because he was one of the authors of books about social change. He wrote more than a dozen books charting the cultural shift from manufacturing-based economies to those driven by knowledge and data in the 20th century. He worked with his wife, and he predicted the unfolding of what he coined the information age, and he became a sort of guru to world statesmen. Without question, his opus magnum was the 1970 book Future Shock, which describes society's development as a series of waves from the agricultural revolution of the Neolithic age to industrialization in the 18th century to the information age after the 1950s. He warned about a perception of too much change in too short a period of time, and also about the dangers of not adapting to the technological and informational tsunamis to come, or as he put it, the dizzying disorientation brought on by the premature arrival of the future. Future Shock was an international bestseller, one of the great books of the 1970s, and it sold over 15 million copies worldwide. His other extremely influential work was his 1980 book, The Third Wave, and that probably had its greatest impact in communist China. In 2006, the Communist Party named him to a list of 50 foreigners who significantly influenced the country in recent centuries. The Third Wave was a bestseller in China, and a video version produced by his wife was distributed to schools nationwide. The couple said that both were pirated, so they did not earn any royalties. Isn't that just like the Chinese? Here's Alvin Toffler in a brief interview talking about the future.
In his classic book, 1984, Orwell warned about a society in which you turn on the TV and Big Brother has a camera watching you. And of course, what we've done is flip that around. We've turned it backward. Yes, Big Brother's watching us, but at the same time, we are watching Big Brother. The Velvet Revolution of the Czechs, when they overthrew the communist government. Also, the students used video cameras and then set up television sets on street corners to play the results. And Big Brother ain't going to know what hit him until there are literally millions and millions and millions of camcorders in the hands of poor people, in the hands of minorities, in the hands of terrorists. And I believe that this is not something that our present political structures are going to be able to accommodate without phenomenal change.
His books raise the interesting question that Sid and I have debated several times of who would the internet have helped more, the Nazis or the Jews. I didn't always agree with Alvin Toffler. I think he got some of his predictions wrong, but there's no question that he was one of the most influential writers about social change in the 20th century. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. I apologize for a little bit of the jet lag. And we're going to close tonight with Mack Rice, who died recently at the age of 82. Mack Rice was a nice African-American boy from Clarksdale, Mississippi. In the early 50s, his family moved to Detroit in the migration, and Mack Rice became a songwriter. Ironically, not in Detroit for Motown, but for Stax Records in Memphis. He wrote a bunch of stuff for the great Stax recording artists, but he wrote two classics. The first one I want to mention is for the Staple Singers in 1971. He was the author of Respect Yourself.
Respect yourself. Respect yourself. Respect yourself. Respect yourself. If you don't respect yourself, ain't nobody gonna give a good go. Respect yourself.
Hey, if Mack Rice had never written anything else, he'd be immortalized as a songwriter. But we're going to close with a song that was definitely his magnum opus. In 1965, he was visiting his friend, the actress-singer Della Reese in New York City. She told him she was thinking about buying her drummer, Calvin Shields, a new Lincoln for his birthday. Rice, being from Detroit, thought it was a great idea. When he mentioned this to Shields, the drummer replied, "I don't want a Lincoln, I want a Mustang." And Mack Rice wrote Mustang Mama. He came back to Detroit, and a young Aretha Franklin urged him to change the name of the song to Mustang Sally, and as recorded by the incomparable Wilson Pickett, it became one of the great soul songs of the 20th century. It's in the Rolling Stone Top 500, and it contains one of the immortal lines in rock and roll, "Ride, Sally, Ride." Here's our closing tribute to Mack Rice.
Mustang Sally, kiss you, baby.